We're gonna take another round of questions. Okay, Prof. Eko. Okay, another one here. Maybe, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Very nice. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Anis. Very interesting expositions, and I like the idea, the three components you mentioned, and I guess the success of policy really depends on those three things: component of trust, competency, integrity, and also intimacy. And it's not only in time of crisis, but also in normal times as well. So I have two questions about resilience. So the first one is, we know that people differ in terms of their response towards crisis. So the concept of resilience can be very different for different people. So their action, their reactions would be very different as well. So when we have a policy and we know that the policy is good, unfortunately the impact could be could vary. So some people may not be that much affected, but some others, unfortunate things like the low-income family would be very much affected. So to what extent that we should tweak the one-size-fits-all policy with additional complementary policies to soften the impact on the unfortunate group of the population. The second question is, if we look at the notion of resilience, I mean, there are two different notions of resilience. If you talk to engineers, they will talk about resilience is basically ability to come back to the original state.
Yeah.
But when you talk about social system, resilience is more complex because there's no guarantee that you are actually going back to the original equilibrium, we call it. It could be another equilibrium which is totally different from before. So it's interesting to me, for us, I think, to see to what extent the crisis and the conflicts has shifted. I mean, in terms of recovery, the original state may not be the state that we were before. So what are the changes that we experience, especially if you look at from the point of view of now, relative to that times before the crisis? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Eko. Your question really worth writing as a journal article. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, hi. Good afternoon, Pak Anis. My name is Kenny. I'm a student here. So I have a question from a more macro governance kind of point of view. So earlier you mentioned in your speeches that that it's important to focus on science, data-driven decision-making process. Yeah. So how important do you think that the person in the driver's seat, the national leaders themselves, should be technical experts, or do you think that it's more efficient to have a team following you, or if not just technical expertise, is it more about something else, that, you know, that source that should make a good national leader? More technical or something else that you think is necessary? Kenny. Thank you.
Okay, another question. I think I saw hands in the middle. Maybe a female student. Okay, there's a one here. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, Pak Anis. So I'm an Indonesian NTU student also. So my question is regarding on the stakeholder management, because I think when you are in crisis situation, you have a lot of different category people that you have to face. For example, UMKM, SME, and then healthcare hospital. So how do you balance your decision to basically make everyone happy? And maybe the additional question is because the COVID is not only in one phase, but there is going up and then it slows down, and then in the next month it can going up again. So in this different phase, how do you see the situation, and how do you make the decision to to loosen up the lockdown, or to make it more strict of the restrictive measure? So yeah, that's my question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any female students asking questions, please? Anyone? Oh, okay, there. Yeah, good.
Hello, Papa Anis. I'm Hafida. I'm PhD student in civil engineering. So I have a question about the term of the resilience and then urban urban resilience itself. So we know we have many terms, fancy standard from IPCC with climate change and so on. But how to translate these fancy words to the other people that lives outer of Jakarta area? Because maybe for them they are not really affected with this climate change in terms of their mind, but although reality it really can affect them. So in future, if you plan to be a leaders in outside of Jakarta or in a greater area above it, so how is your strategy to make them familiarized with these fancy words, standards from the internationals? Thank you.
Okay, so we have 4 questions. The last one, can you repeat? Elaborate a little bit. Give examples. Can you use microphone? Yeah.
Yeah, so for example, we have a lot of international standard from like climate change standard from IPCC
okay.
and so on. So many regions in Indonesia, like for example, my grandparents in Yogyakarta, they don't really understand about climate change and the effect.
I see.
But we need to implement this climate change effect in the master plan of cities or on the regions. And how do you, make them also be aware of this kind of important changes in the future, although maybe it's very fancy for them.
So basically, you're asking the standard measurement for resiliency.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, got
Yeah.
it. That's a very engineering question. Okay.
Let me address the last one. I'll go back in reverse. When it comes to big ideas, big challenge such as climate change, that is complex indeed. And when you tell household, or common household families about climate change, the most likely response would be, okay, so what? What should I be doing? I think our responsibility is to convert that into actionable, practical measures to be taken at the city level, at the neighborhood level, and at the individual household levels. So, for example, buildings contributed about 30% of greenhouse gas emission worldwide. And air condition is also a contributing factor to that. So translating that into actionable feature at home is key. Setting up your temperature, duration of your usage of air conditioning, for example, at the household level. And then you're talking about garbage management. Yeah, you divide your you sort out your waste, sorting out your waste, reduce your waste, and then reuse, and then recycles, and then sorting out. That is all done at the practical community level, individual levels. So if we just translating as it is, the big principles, then it is definitely difficult to adopt. But when you translate that into something actionable at the individual level, at the family level, the community level, then we will be able to see that change. I'll give you one example. Jakarta experience problems of air pollution through motorized vehicles. And our approach is that we will reduce greenhouse gas emission in Jakarta by 30% in the year 2030. So then we break it down into actionable programs. And when you break it down into actionable programs, communities individuals were able to do what our target uh, is, is aimed at, and converting the public from using private vehicles into public transport. You translate that into action that individuals is willing to do it. Integrated ticketing system, integrated route system of public transport, then to ride public transportation becomes something rational. You don't have to be altruistic to ride public transport, because if you ride public transport, economically it's more efficient, and then in terms of time, you also save times, save money, and convenient. So you can be rational in adopting such a noble purposes of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So that's one example. We need to translate that into something actionable, and that people adopting it and thought it is a rational choice. If it is not a rational choice, then people will not do it. Questions on UMKM, small businesses. I will address this with the questions of Prof. Eko at the same time. But with regard to how do you make decisions of more restrictive or less restrictive, listen to the experts. Epidemiologists, they have the numbers, they have way of predicting, listen to them. Don't use your instinct, because your instinct doesn't work. You have no previous experience of dealing with this, so you never actually build instinct on this. Listen to the epidemiologists. So the epidemiologists, we are receiving report from epidemiologists on daily basis, and every week they will give us recommendation on what to anticipate in the following weeks. And based on that, we make decisions. And whenever we are losing up our restriction or restrictive measures, whenever we are losing it up, we always tell the public there may be a time that we have to pull what we call emergency brake. So let's open up, let's relax a little bit. But if things getting worse, we will have to pull emergency brake. Who decide when to pull emergency brake? It's the people that actually decide. If contagion continues, and because of people interaction, then we have to pull the emergency brake. So it's not us wanting to pull the emergency brake, it's everyone's behavior in an accumulated way that forces authority to pull the emergency brake. The readers were all the scientists, the epidemiologists. With regards to small businesses, and this is also Prof. Eko, with regard to resilience groups. And your first questions, some experience positive impact, some were experiencing negative impact. And I remember in October 2020, so it was about 6 months after the outbreak in Jakarta, we had to decide minimum salary for 2021. The decision is in October because company will be using that decision in January. So they will be using on their planning in November and December. And it's on the hand of the provincial government. This is the time where we adopt a policy that is not recommended by the law of the national government. We adopted an asymmetric approach to minimum wage, and never happened in Indonesia before. What is asymmetric approach? Because the crisis is like a K-shape. Some were going up, some industry were going up, some industry were going down. why should we then lower minimum wage for the industry that actually experiencing an expansion? Look, healthcare industry, we're going up. Factory of masker, factory of, all this medical equipments, we're actually experiencing a booming. Why should we adopt a lowering our minimum wage? So we adopted that. The central government was not too happy with that decision, but we thought, it's the right thing to do. We cannot just adopt symmetric approach to all problems. So we adopted asymmetric approach. This is where on that diagrams, good but wrong in a way. Because when you look at the restrictive measures, it doesn't look like you're following rules and regulations. But the reality is asymmetric impact of that. Now, the second is small businesses, is this. How do we go back after this? There is a silver lining that we didn't realize before. This is what happened. We have micro businesses in large number in Jakarta, small businesses. They are selling food, the street food, the street vendors, and then you have these families producing bakeries and then being distributed in their neighborhood. When everything has to close down, their business stops. Now, what still continue is the online transaction. Unfortunately, all the small businesses were not participating in the marketplace, the digital marketplace. They're not in that digital marketplace. So our strategy is let's get them on board of digital marketplace. By doing what? We are giving two things. One, it's called IUMK, Izin Usaha Mikro Kecil, business permits for micro and small businesses. We're giving it away. We're coming into small businesses and asking them, do you have permits? And they said, no, I don't. Then we're giving you permits. Basically, we're giving away permits. Number two, we're giving away tax ID and PWP. We're giving away. Because with that too, they can register on the digital marketplace, and suddenly they don't have to rely on their neighborhood markets for their businesses, but they can get orders from anywhere in the city. So Jakarta had only 58,000 small businesses permit in 2017. I'm sorry, in 2020, at the beginning of 2020. After this crisis, we had more than 250,000 small businesses permits. And all these 250,000 were able to take orders online from anywhere in the cities. That never happened before. Let me give you an anecdotal experience. I stopped at the Warung Kaki Lima street vendors selling pecel lele. Pecel lele is a typical kaki lima. So I ordered the pecel lele, if some of you were kangen pecel lele. And then I waited for the pecel lele to come, and it never came up. I waited, and then finally I asked my assistant, please check to the owners, where is my pecel lele? And then the owners came to me and said, Pak Gubernur, my apologies. We have lineup of online order that we need to service, and all these ojek, the online ojek parking next to it. I thought it was Pangkalan Ojek. Pangkalan Ojek is the ojek station, because there's so many ojek there. Apparently, those are waiting for delivery of this. So the impact of this crisis that we're giving it away is something of new also to us. So now, after the crisis, Prof. Eko, we rearranged our zoning regulations, and it was timely Because in the year 2021 and 2022, that was the time in which we are revising our RDTR, Rencana Detail Tata Ruang. Just after the pandemic, so we are able now to adopt a zoning regulations that will allow resilience of a community. In the past, if you have an apartment complex, you allow a property developer to build apartment complex, you don't require them to build health facility, you don't require them to build schools, you don't require them to build groceries. But now, given that, if it ever happens and we have to close down the communities, these communities still can function. There are few examples in Jakarta where it is already there. One example is the Rasuna area. The Rasuna area, when they're experiencing a lockdown, they still function. The malls is there, all the stores is there. As long as the community is kept within them, they can continue to function. So we have revised our zoning regulation according to this crisis. Kenny, on the technique, you have to combine some technicalities, some generals. You cannot just have one. You have to have both. And I must say, you have to have individuals on your team to do benchmarking to others who have experienced similar crisis before, and pick up some lesson learned. And always do a multi-backgrounds discussion session so that we will be able to hear different perspective before a decision is made. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pak Anies.